I'll start because I'm probably the biggest Drake fan, definitely the biggest Drake fan on this podcast. Um, I thought the album. I'll reserve judgment on the other two. I'll say for sure. I don't think the other two are as good as Iceman. But I don't. I want to give. I don't want to give a because I haven't listened to those two albums as much to give a fully thoughtful review. Now, Iceman, I've been playing back and forth. I think it's his best album since at least Scorpion, and his best solo project since at least Scorpion, or maybe even More Life. I was talking to Galvez about it earlier today, and he made the point that basically because he's addressing the beef so much and basically reacting to the aftermath of the beef on Iceman. Basically, the beef gave him something to talk about other than like what what his music has been about more recently, which is just basically like empty music about how much money he has and women and the typical Drake stuff. And I just thought it just was just a much more interesting album because of that. And I would give the album a solid. I would say that if you compare it to like For All the Dogs uh, or Certified Lover Boy, the highs on that album on those two albums may have been better, but those albums were not nearly as consistent as this album. So this album maybe doesn't have any tens, maybe a couple nines, but overall it's a very solid 7.5 or 8, and it's I'm talking a strong 7.5 or 8. Way I judge albums is how many songs from the album do I download to my Apple Music library. I think I've downloaded 14 of the 18 songs from Iceman, which obviously that's a fantastic hit rate. So yeah, I think the boy he did what he had to do, and the album is performing well streaming wise. It's going to open probably with the top three albums on the Billboard chart. Iceman will probably do between 400,000 and 500,000 first week. The other two will both clear 100,000. So yeah, any like people try to act like Drake could ever be finished or anything like that. That's never going to happen. Drake is Drake. He's one of the biggest artists of all time, and his music is timeless at the end of the day. Galvez, I know you listen to it. I don't know if you listened to the whole thing. You say you listened to a good portion of it though. What was your reaction to the album, Iceman? At least.
I mean, like I said before, it was a good album. Um, you know, we said before the Drake is like the Knicks, right? When the Knicks are good, the NBA is just better. When Drake is good and when Drake is relevant, hip hop is better. Uh, you know, um, and like I said on this album, like almost every song is just him addressing people. Some by name directly, some are obvious shots at it's just super obvious. So it was a good record. I mean, a good album. He had good records on there, and so I haven't heard all of it, but I've probably heard like 75, 80% of it. A couple songs are like, okay, he probably could have, you know, not included him in the album, and it would have made zero difference. But um, I just think it just speaks to the star power of Drake, right? Where everybody was kind of like, can Drake recover from basically getting smashed and smoked in the beef with Kendrick? And he proved that he's still, even though you might think Kendrick is a better rapper and a better lyricist and a better whatever, but as far as star power, I mean, I think Drake's just just better, you
Mm.
know.
Mitch.
I know on the West Coast, you can't really say that kind of stuff. I'm not really comparing the two, but it's really like it's just crazy to see that, and I was talking with Wilson before, where Drake became kind of like Ja Rule-ish, where it was like he was the laughing stock. He was the butt of all the jokes. And then when push came to shove, and he had been teasing the album for a few months already, and everybody was like, Now this, Drake's done. Nobody cares about Drake. Nobody's gonna look out for Drake. And then the day he drops 3 albums, the internet went crazy. The buzz was just, you know, unmatched.
Yeah. Mitch, now I know you said that you didn't listen because you're not really a Drake fan anymore or whatever, but you were saying some interesting stuff though before the show. Do you remember what you were saying? Would you like to repeat it or like how you?
Uh, about Drake?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'll just say, the star power and the buzz and the hype and surrounding the album. I feel like my feed is completely different than yours because everything I'm seeing on my feed is like, man, this fool put out 3 albums and they all trash. Like that's all I've been seeing. It's crazy. Like when I look at Threads, when I look at Twitter, Instagram, um, yeah, just like a lot of people just kind of saying all 3 albums kind of mid. Um, but yeah, I was saying before that like for me, like I like Drake. Drake puts out good music, and I think Drake's actually a phenomenal artist. So I think from phenomenal artists we expect a lot.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's just I feel like he never kind of what'd you call him, Anto? The boy?
The
He never
boy.
became he never became the man.
That's what
You know what
Kendrick
I mean?
said.
Like his music has never grown up. Like, you know what I mean? So it was tough, Drake kind of fell off for me when I realized that like, man, he just rapping about bullshit. You know what I mean? When he puts out like Tootsie Slide and shit like that, I'm just like, man, shit catchy as hell, but like you're
But
not
I think,
saying anything. You're not saying
but I,
anything.
but I think other than Kanye, right? Most rappers who were at the very top, they eventually fell off. They eventually just, Drake's been at the top 2 or 3 for 15 years now. So it was only, it was like obvious that his music was just never going to be able to hold up to the standards of like Take Care and all those other,
Yeah.
all those other albums. It was like with Michael Jackson, right? We were talking about like with the whole movie. It's like it's amazing to think like that Bad and Dangerous. They're like, well, they didn't do as good as Thriller. This motherfucker still sold like 30+ million albums, you
Yeah.
know. And it's like even the greatest of all time, Michael Jackson, his music really kind of kind of stumbled in the late '90s and the early 2000s. He had like Michael Jackson had like no buzz musically, in the
Oh
late
man.
'90s and early 2000s.
But you know what? You know what's funny about that right there though is some of my favorite songs are actually like Butterflies and You Rock My World
Hmm.
off of that off of that Invincible album that he put out in
That was a
Okay.
very underrated album. He just
that's what I'm saying.
had he had just fallen off the rails. So like, but it's just it's like it's like Eminem, right? Eminem musically
Ooh,
fell off,
yeah,
right?
yeah, a
He
little
was
bit.
Lil Wayne.
Yeah,
Um, you could say like all of our favorites in the '90s and the 2000s. Like, I love DMX. DMX, unfortunately, towards the end, his music just wasn't the same. I don't know if it was like their time had already came and went, and the younger crowd was just looking for new rappers. But um, to say, at least to say Drake's been at the top for sure 15 years. I mean, that's crazy to think about, regardless of how you feel about his music.
Yeah. Um.
But yeah, Drake does make a lot of music still for 18 to 25-year-old girls though.
Yeah. That's what Maid of Honor is for.